Hey guys, it's COREROSS, and today we are talking about the Rainbow Six IP being spun off into a separate company at Ubisoft, and how this means there's going to be a brand new Rainbow Six AAA game in development very soon. So first of all, a basic overview of what is happening, because this is quite a complicated subject, and we're just going to make it super simple, so we will lose some of the detail here, but it'll make it nice and easy to understand, and then we can actually get onto the meat of the subject we want to talk about today. So first of all, simply put, Ubisoft has been in financial trouble where they're spending more cash than they're making. And what is making a lot of money is like their 10-year-old Rainbow Six Siege. So it's not great that their new titles are just not managing to gain traction and make good big profits like Ubisoft used to be able to do back in the day. Because of this, they need a cash infusion from an outside investor, and they went and decided to go with Tencent. Now, they already have an investment with Ubisoft, but it seems that Tencent played a bit more hardball this time, because instead of just giving them money for a portion of the company, which you would normally do, they went, okay, take your most profitable brands, so Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six, put them in a separate company, so it's still owned by Ubisoft. A simple example of this would be Microsoft, who has a company called Xbox. Xbox has a CEO, it has its own staff and all that, and it's a separate company, but it's fully owned by Microsoft. So with this company that owns these IPs, it's mostly owned by Ubisoft at this moment in time, with an investment by Tencent. Now, what happens if Ubisoft gets into future financial trouble and needs more cash infusions? Well, then, of course, it means they're going to get a bigger percentage of this separate company until potentially they own the entire company. Now, this is something, of course, Ubisoft doesn't want to do. So they want to go away and they make really good games that sell well, make big profits, and then don't need to get any more cash infusions from outside investors. And of course, if they end up losing their big money-making IPs, it's very possible that Ubisoft one day will cease to exist. So let's focus down now onto that brand new company and what it's going to look like. So first of all, it's going to be a group of what Ubisoft is calling autonomous creative houses. And essentially, this will probably end up being development studios that will go off and create games independently of Ubisoft. Now, this could be a good thing, but I did mention previously the Xbox and Microsoft analog, where that is a separate company run separately, and Xbox ain't doing too good right now. And they've had some good stuff, like they've done well with Game Pass, but I would argue they've kind of destroyed the Xbox. So if this brand new autonomous company is going to do well, it's kind of more of a 50-50 flip here. But there is potentially good stuff here for us gamers, especially Rainbow Six gamers, because this means there will be, and this is not a might be kind of thing, this is 100%, there is going to be a brand new AAA Rainbow Six title, which will be in development very soon. And previously, Ubisoft had no plans to make another AAA Rainbow Six game, and they were quite happy to just keep milking Rainbow Six Siege and not really add anything else that could compete with it at all. So now, an autonomous company, still technically owned by Ubisoft, can now go out and make a AAA Rainbow Six game. Now, at this point, I will mention there was a rumor a couple of months back saying there was a Rainbow Six game in development right now, but it said that it was a turn-based strategy game and it'll be more like XCOM, so a bit more indie game in size. But I will also mention there's not been another rumor since then. So there's been one rumor about that turn-based game. That means that quite possibly that was a fake rumor. I did enjoy making a video about that a couple of months back though, because I love speculating on what a Rainbow Six turn-based game would be. So it was very cool to just go over different ideas, and maybe if we're lucky, it will show up someday. But if it does, then its development would have predated this new company being developed, so it would have been made by Ubisoft proper. Now, there's a possibility here you may be getting a little bit confused because this new company owns the Rainbow Six IP. So, can Ubisoft still make Rainbow Six games independently as well? And that is, yeah, because Ubisoft owns the company with the IP, so they own the IP. And then, of course, we've actually had another Rainbow Six game come out, and that was Rainbow Six Extraction, which was co-op focused, and I would consider it to be kind of a double A development, although its development was delayed so much that I presume the budget was probably triple A by the end of the day. But it was certainly a double A game in its scope and its final release. I'll also mention as well that there's still a potential that this doesn't go ahead and Ubisoft doesn't get their funding, they don't get their brand new company, they don't get their money from Tencent and all that. And that is because these deals have to go through the regulators. And with Ubisoft being a French company, it has to go through the French government to be kind of a confirmed, and then that'll happen. That's expected to all be kind of worked out by the end of 2025. But even then, they've gone ahead and hired a CEO for this company, and they'll already be beginning to work on these brand new titles that will be getting made by this company, and they'll be in very early development right now. And this is when we can now get into speculation, because we know they're going to make a Rainbow Six game, we know it's going to be a AAA title, and we know that Tencent has at least some sway in what type of title gets made. So of course, the one to go for straight off the bat, and probably the big money maker, is to make a brand new Rainbow Six multiplayer game. And if you think about it, if this gets started development now and releases in 5-year time, that means Rainbow Six Siege will be 15 years old. And it's quite possible that it now could be replaced. Previously, Ubisoft said they were just going to run Siege basically forever as long as they could, as long as it was profitable. But now with Siege X's launch not being that hot, they've actually talked about in their quarterly reports that it did not make as much money as they were expecting. They hope that will go up over time, but certainly there's a bit of disappointment there. And that could easily lead to a Rainbow Six Siege 2, which previously had a 0% chance of happening, but now Siege 2 is possible. And that is crazy to think that the business models changed that dramatically, that a Siege 2 is back on the cards now, which is unexpected, and I would not have guessed just, even a couple of years ago. Or some other sort of multiplayer game, and there's a lot of potential with the Rainbow Six IP to go in very different directions. And of course, I would assume it would be heavily monetized. Now, they could do something I would find unlikely, especially with Tencent's kind of potential influence here, is they could do a single player game. And I would kill for a AAA Rainbow Six single player campaign that I would expect would not be to everyone's tastes, but I would just love it. But I think the probability here is far lower than some sort of multiplayer title. However, something that's probably higher in probability is they might look at something like Helldivers and Ready or Not that have both been extremely successful and think, why don't we make a squad-based co-op game with the Team Rainbow? And that would mean you could have a live service game, you could add operators, you could do a lot of what Helldivers has done, and you could potentially make a very successful co-op experience. Now, another reason to do this is cheating is getting out of hand on all games. And it looks like the anti-cheats are falling behind significantly behind the cheaters. So it might be that in 5 years' time, multiplayer games might be in a worse situation than they are now. So having a cooperative multiplayer game might be more of the norm in 5 years' time rather than competitive. But what we do know is a brand new AAA Rainbow Six game is going to begin development very soon, which means we could get our hands on it in about 5 to 6 years. And guys, drop down to the comment section and make your elevator pitch for what Rainbow Six game Ubisoft should develop. Because honestly, they might well need your ideas. And for me, I would love a single player game, maybe in the vein of what Rainbow Six Patriots was going to be before it was cancelled. But if not, I'd love to see some sort of cooperative game where it's procedurally generated, so I go on counterterrorism missions, but literally every single one of them is different. And then you could easily have Siege's live service elements with cosmetics, new operators, and even, of course, with a co-op game, new enemy types. And it'd be like Ready or Not, but with just procedural content that would never ever end. But that's my dreams. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.